Thank you very much. Terima kasih, everyone. Selamat pagi. Nice to meet you. I'm Björn von Deen, International Policy Advisor at AITA, covering our engagements across Asia and the Pacific. For those of you who are unaware, AITA is the leading and trusted business voice on carbon markets. We've been around since 1999, so since the start of carbon markets under Kyoto Protocol, and we advise and work with governments and private sector around the world. We are very honored and excited to convene this roundtable today, which is organized by IBC and, of course, the Indonesia Climate Growth Dialogue, ICGD. And we actually hosted kind of a warm-up discussion earlier this week on Monday evening, thanks to Australians and Kinetic also for co-sponsoring this event, and Pa Agus and the team, where a few key bullets were raised by carbon market participants. How can Indonesia raise the much needed finance through carbon markets by tapping into the international demand? How can Indonesia strengthen its domestic carbon markets, including both the ETS and the crediting mechanism, to support green competitiveness? And finally, how can Indonesia's ambitious growth targets be met whilst doing so inclusively and sustainably, protecting human livelihoods and natural ecosystems? So I hope we'll get the chance to discuss some of these questions here today. And we have a very distinguished set of participants around the table. We have very limited time, so I will ask everyone to be concise. And I think rather than just focusing on the challenges that we all know exist in international carbon market, in Indonesia's carbon market, to really move towards the solutions. Because we are here today to solve the issue, to work together, and to hopefully find some common agreements. So without further ado, I would like to hand over and invite Ibu Mari Elkapangestu, who is chair of the ICGD and Presidential Special Envoy for International Trade and Multilateral Cooperation, to provide your opening remarks and set the scene for our conversation here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm the chair of ICGD, in Indonesia Climate and Growth Dialogue. We are a new dialogue made up of all the stakeholders between government, business. No, actually, government is not part of it. I'm very confused because I'm not sure I'm government or not government, but basically the intention was to have all the stakeholders there: the private sector, the think tanks, and the analysts who are doing the work, as well as media, and we actually also have parliament members as members of this dialogue. So we're very happy to partner with IBC on this panel, because we really have this vision that if we want to have high growth, which has been the discussion since yesterday, if you want 8% growth, you want to do it because you want to get out of the middle income trap, you want to create jobs, you want to become a high income country, but you do need to accelerate your growth. How do you accelerate your growth but do it in a sustainable way? That's really what, and we believe you can do both. And we also believe that green is actually the new opportunity of the future, right? It's not just about addressing the climate issue, but it is really the fact that the transition that you're going to go through, that you have to go through, and the fact that it's not just countries but companies are also having net zero targets, will actually be providing you new sources of investment and therefore growth and jobs and so on. But for that, you need to really increase your investments, and the government itself has come up with a number of $280 billion that they will need to meet their NDC targets. And only 35% of that is going to come from the budget. The rest has to come from the private sector. And we talk a lot about blended finance as one way forward. That is involving the private sector. But innovative financing instruments, including carbon credits, is a key component of that financing gap that needs to be addressed. So I'm just putting the context of why today's discussion on carbon markets is important as that piece of addressing the financing gap. and unlocking the Indonesia's carbon market potential will be critical component to for us to unleash Indonesia's growth potential and bridge this investment gap. So in the last 100 days, Indonesia has taken significant steps actually to unlock this financial opportunity. The president is committed to scaling up carbon markets. And on the 20th of January, they did launch the Indonesian International Carbon Exchange with a number of projects from the government, mainly from PLN, I think, and some other companies, as a platform for international trading of carbon. Now, it's a start, it's a beginning, but success will depend on three critical factors. And I just wanted to mention, in the president's commitment to scale up the carbon markets, all of you in this room have been part of the many discussions we have had on the importance of improving, let's say, the existing regulations, the Perpres 98, which is now the regulation that is governing the what we call the value, economic value of carbon. And there are things inside that regulation that needs to be improved so that we can really have these three critical factors being addressed. Market credibility, we need the high integrity demand and supply. So a transparent, high integrity carbon market is essential. And we are now at least open to the cross-border trading. And we're also open to the voluntary carbon market. But then you need to have build the institution and regulations in line with best practices and world-class standards, and use the state-of-art technology, as well as have the data and the financial market infrastructure. So we really need to have the national regulations align with internationally recognized standards, ensuring both compliance and global market integration. So that's the principle that we hope we will be doing the improvement of the regulation. And finally, of course, public-private collaboration. Governments and businesses must work together to build a sustainable investment ecosystem. So as we enter today's discussion, let's focus on three key questions. How can Indonesia capture a larger share of global climate finance? There's a lot of, I guess, investors in this room, or those who are from the private sector. We really want to hear, so that as we are working on improving the regulations, we can also reflect that in the improvement of the regulation. So what policies, integrity, safeguarding, and pricing mechanisms will enhance our competitiveness? And how can we create an investment environment that ensures long-term sustainability? So let me end on those three questions and hope that we can have a lively discussion.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mari. I strongly concur with the milestones you mentioned about credibility, about regulatory balance, international standards, and public-private collaboration. And I hope we can dive a bit deeper into these topics during the discussion. So now turning to you, Mr. Satya Tripathi, you are Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. And you have also been the Assistant Secretary General at UNEP. You have led several efforts on REDD+ and tropical forest financing facilities around the globe, including in Indonesia. What are your reflections on kind of the current market status and how Indonesia should improve or work with its current regulations to tap into this potential?
Thank you, Bjorn. As you rightly mentioned, it all started in '99, not just for IETA, for the carbon markets. Actually, we've been there before. Between 2001 and 2012, 1 billion certified emission reduction credits were issued. The price varied anywhere between $20 to 20 cents. And then, of course, there was the global financial crisis of 2007, following which the entire market collapsed. But I think, we are at a different, even though we have been there before, we've seen it all, it's a different time now for three reasons. First is that the train has now left the station. So people are very riled up about what President Trump is doing or might do, and speculating all kinds of things. I wouldn't be very worried about it, honestly. Yes, it will have impact, but I think the tide has turned in terms of the corporate world, that businesses don't change policies every 3 days. Then you are not running a business anymore. And so that's why once they are set on a certain course, that course will continue. It may slow down a little bit, but it's not going back and forth like government policy. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Those of you that lose heart shouldn't actually, because I think we are on a different track now. The second thing is that we certainly lack integrity in the conversations, and it's not a problem. We're talking about solutions, and I'll tell you why I think we lack integrity. Every big corporation that has done an internal study, from Shell to Exxon to the ones that really need to either do insetting or offsetting, have arrived at a low price scenario of $100 per ton, or a mid price scenario of $130 a ton, or a high price scenario of anywhere around 160 plus. Why on God's earth are we selling carbon at $15 a ton? So to Ibumari's point, like money is what money does, carbon can be what carbon does actually. Become that fantastic tool in terms of economic growth that really lifts up countries and communities at the bottom of the pyramid. But it will happen only if we bring integrity back into that conversation. Everybody is hedging. That hedging has to stop. We are hedging the future of humanity and that of our children, and that's not going to end very well. We need to keep that in mind every time we are talking carbon or anything, because without that, we're not going to make progress. And the third is that for those of you in the room that really care about climate and all, we need to build buyers coalitions. That is happening in a very tiny way in different parts of the world where carbon is selling for $50, $70, especially in the voluntary carbon markets. We really need to build those buyers coalitions where people step up to the plate and say, I'm going to pay for what it is really worth. And then, of course, lastly, carbon as a scientific measure is very clear. What is a ton of CO2? But if somebody is doing sustainable agriculture, where it's water conservation is 50%, you're not using chemical fertilizers and pesticides, you're doing 365 days mulching, which is improving soil moisture, soil porosity, soil nutrients, and all of it, we should be willing to pay more instead of talking about all these things in isolated chambers, that, oh, okay, I'm only paying for the carbon. No, we should pay for the carbon for what it exactly is doing. Like the same way we do, we go and buy something off the shelf. We say, oh, this is organic, I'm willing to pay more. Why? Because that will prevent me from going to hospital in a few years and pay tons of money for cancer. So that's basically what it is. So I think we need to bring integrity back into the conversation. And that will empower IATA, which has done a phenomenal job despite all the lows and highs. And countries like Indonesia are at the forefront of that battle to keep their phenomenal biodiversity reserves, natural resources, but it is not going to happen through lip service. We really have to step up to the plate and provide the resources in a fair and just manner. We keep talking about just transition, but just transition is not just two words. Just transition really means there's integrity front and center of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Satya. And I fully concur on the point that business policy does not change so quickly. Of course, we are convening more than 350 member companies within IATA, and we are seeing that membership growth is at an all-time high. So all companies around the world are currently looking at carbon markets, the opportunities they bring, and emissions trading, because we know it can be an effective tool to achieving our common climate targets. But now turning actually to one of the companies, Pa Agus, you represent Barito Renewables Energy. You're the director, have been in the energy sector for a very long time. What are your reflections on the market status, maybe particularly here in Indonesia, and what opportunities do you see in this space?
Thank you, Bjorn. So let me first say that I'm delighted to be part of this roundtable meeting with my esteemed panelists, Umari, and also the participants here. So Barito Renewables, we are the largest at this point renewable energy producers in Indonesia, and by extension, we are also the largest producer of carbon credits and the green attribute certificates like REC. So we have been in the market in carbon since 2007, so it's 17 years ago. So We have seen the ups and downs of the international market. We have seen the first hopeful times, like what Satya mentioned before, where we can sell our carbon at $17 per ton internationally. And recently, when the price that we got a quote is even less than $1 per ton. Right? So it is so volatile, and sometimes we feel that the international market can be so finicky that it reflects on us that first, for Indonesia, we cannot 100% rely on the international market for us to jumpstart our domestic carbon. We need to be able to do it ourselves. Secondly, in terms of the carbon itself, like Pak Satya mentioned, a ton of carbon is a molecule. It's a very scientific idea. And when we created our project documents, it's very comprehensive and very mathematical. Gives us a false sense of security that 1 ton of carbon is the same everywhere. It's not the case. Unfortunately, as a participant, the same carbon generated, for example, from a renewable projects compared to renewables can be 6 times as the difference in price. Right? The same tons of carbon sold, if they are able to access the European market compared to when they are not able, it can be 12 times. So actually, there are multiple shades of green. That's the reality. If Indonesia is going to create our own domestic carbon market, which I think we should, right, we should also still learn from the international standard, but we also need to remember outside there are no one single definition of green. We should not be hesitant to create our own standard that is fit for our evolutionary phase in this market. And with that, I would like to move to the second part of my sharing, which is our thinking about the solution. Right? If there is the problem, what is the solution? For us, the most important thing is to jumpstart the what we have now, which is very good with IDX carbon and everything, the SPE. We need to jumpstart the demand. That's what we see, what's most lacking domestically. And we can do it 2 things. We can either do a carrot approach, or we can do a stick approach. Carbon tax or carbon incentive. From an industry perspective, we believe that Indonesian domestic industries still have challenges in terms of getting to burden more in terms of carbon tax. And also we need to remember the reality of the geopolitics now, right? With the trade wars and everything. We believe that the best solutions or the better solutions, shall I say, is the incentive part, the incentive route. If a company in Indonesia can be incentivized to get to carbon neutrality and get some tangible incentives, a tax or a subsidy by the government, right, it can create a real impetus for the industry to move. But then people will say, hold on, Indonesian government does have a limited budget, right? They have money priorities, and we understand that. But one of the way that we can learn is also to have some kind of circularity, where we can see and try to emulate the dana pungutan sawit, for example, right? Where the Indonesian biodiesel industry has taken off in the past 10 years because of cross-subsidy between upstream and downstream. We believe that if an economic policy can be set in such a way that there is an incentive, but also there's a tax, additional tax for us as a project developer, for us as a carbon exporter, we are fine with that. But both the supply and demand will be created. So I think, so lastly, what are our aspirations? So Barito Renewables, we are the largest geothermal players in Indonesia. We believe geothermal will play a very important role in energy transition because geothermal is one of the few renewable energy that can replace coal as a baseload suppliers. But more and more, geothermal in Indonesia will need subsidy, will need some kind of financing solution that will enable more and more resources to be developed. We hope and we truly believe that the carbon market is the most elegant instrument. The carbon credit can help move the needle for the Indonesian geothermal players and other renewable energy players to participate more fully in the Indonesian energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being concise and providing ideas for solutions and the road ahead. So now turning briefly to you, Susan. You represent Shanghai Treasure Carbon. You're the CEO. Maybe coming more from the international angle, it would be great to hear some key success examples and how Indonesia can tap into the international carbon market.
Thank you. Good morning. Since I'm the new face, I would like to introduce myself first. I'm the founder of Shanghai Treasure Carbon, which was established in 2010. In the past 15 years, to be honest, our business is most of our business is focusing on the China's carbon market. As we see, the China's carbon market is also started in 2010. So we experience almost all the period of China's carbon market. And our main business is doing the CCER developing. To be honest, we have generated more than 100 projects in China. Our market share is over 30%. And since we are the developer in China, we're also doing a lot of carbon trading things. Also, we have traded a lot of carbon credits, not only the CEA, but also the CCERs in China. And we also doing a lot of carbon finance things. We issued the first China's carbon fund, the first China carbon trust, and also we do carbon pledge with the banks as well. Until now, we have issued 21 carbon fund in mainland of China, and we also recently issued 2 foreign currency carbon fund, both in Hong Kong and in Singapore. And our US dollar carbon fund will be invested in the overseas countries, and we will buy the carbon credit in the One Belt One Road countries. And later, because we have been in the carbon market in China for more than 15 years, to be honest, we are the oldest carbon assets company in China. So we also provide a lot of services to the emitters. We also have our big data platform now, like Coach, like some very big SOEs use our big data platform as well. So we know what they will do, because these very big SOEs, they need to offsetting not only scope 1, but also scope 3, and even now they need to offsetting scope 3. So they need a lot of carbon credits, not only in China, but also in other countries. So as the buyer, we would like to cooperate with the different developers. Also, we would like to cooperate with the financial institutions overseas as well. 2 years ago, we go outside of China. We go to Mongolia, we go to Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, and Nepal. We do a lot of develop things. We help the central government of these 4 countries to generate the carbon credit. But I know Indonesia is quite mature. So as the new face, I don't think I will be the developer, but we can cooperate with the developer, and we can co-developer, or if someone have the credits and want to sell it to like Hong Kong, like Singapore, like China, we would like to invest in this kind of credits. And also, just like other speakers said, the green finance is very important to support the sustainability. So we would also like to cooperate with the financial institutions locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can I just ask you to? Thank you. So now we will open the conversation. We have many distinguished participants around the table. And I think you also touched upon a very important topic here, namely that we do know that carbon markets can play a key role in facilitating international finance. But at the same time, compared to the other rooms, we are speaking about coal, about nickel, about palm oil. Carbon is only worth as much as the buyers decide it's worth, right? It's an intangible commodity, and the value depends on the demand side and the standards and methodologies that are being used to issue the credit itself. So I think this is kind of the question that I hope we can discuss today. And I would ask people to please raise your flags if you would like to take the floor, and be very concise because we have limited time. I do want to maybe first give the floor to Pawayu, of course, from MWE, if you would like to share some reflections from the government side about what is currently happening in the Indonesian carbon market.
Thank you, Bjorn. Thank you, Bjorn. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Excellency Ibu Mari Kapangestu. Let me share the update the situation from the government side. That maybe this is important to share the step and the strategy that Indonesian government decided to do in the future. This is very important. Indonesia right now is implementing carbon trading by referring to Presidential Regulation number 98 by years 2021, whereas Indonesia has prepared an Indonesian market scheme on the form of the Indonesian GHG emission reduction certificate, as we call it SPE, and has started carbon trading both domestically and foreign trade. SPE is an Indonesian trading scheme which was designed to develop Indonesian market, and the first stage 2025, and then later it is possible to develop internationally. At the first stage, generally the carbon ecosystem need to be explored and accelerated to match with the integrity, transparency, accountability, and standardized internationally, and also the balance between supply and demand, whether for domestic and international trade. Indonesia carbon trading has and need to be developed significantly in contributing to management of Indonesian state asset and the greatest prosperity of the people. However, various things and strategies have been prepared for Indonesian to establish Indonesian carbon market, including there are 4 steps that we decided to do. The first one, Indonesia open communication and collaboration with various national and international entities and partners to develop and ensure that the carbon market ecosystem can be developed properly in Indonesia. The second one, Indonesia implement the mutual recognition agreement strategy with various internationally recognized private crediting schemes such as FERA, Gold Standard, Plan Vivo, ART, and other crediting schemes to build the Indonesian carbon market, and it will start with the implementation of pilot project for its recognition. The third, on the other hand, Indonesia accelerate the supply of credit, both domestic and international, for all industry sector in accordance with national and international needs or demand for various needs to meet the carbonization program and the net zero emission program that applies globally. The fourth, Indonesia strengthened the national registry system that is a transparent, high integrity, efficient, and effective, and can be implemented practically and easily understandable, so as to provide high public trust and ultimately strengthen the development of the carbon market in Indonesia. Of course, this strategy may be supported by the partners which has capacity and together with Indonesia to develop carbon ecosystem globally. Thank you.
Thank you, terima kasih. Thank you very much. I see a flag raised by Anshari from Gen Zero. Please, when you raise the flag, if you can raise it so I can see your name, it will be helpful. But please, over to you, Anshari.
Thank you, Bjorn. Good morning, everyone. I'm Anshari from Gen Zero. By way of introduction, we are Temasek-owned company focused on decarbonization solutions across technology, nature, and carbon markets. We have a global mandate, and we have invested in both developed and developing markets in Latin America, US, Africa, and Southeast Asia. I think going right to your question, I cut my teeth in the negotiations, Article 6, and I used to chair the Article 6, so I can fully appreciate the complexity of developing regulations that are in line with international rules, but we also need to have a win-win approach for the host country and local communities. And this is where we see the carbon markets moving forward. As investors, we very much welcome a win-win approach, and we've seen ideas and observations in other jurisdictions where they introduce a levy for carbon credits that are exported internationally, or where there's a carbon pricing mechanism domestically, they ring fence a certain share that can be availed to the local domestic market, but not constraining the international export. So I think these are many ways where we can potentially develop new and innovative approaches for win-win solutions. I'd just like to also touch on three major areas there where we see significant mitigation potential in Asia, Southeast Asia, and also Indonesia. So the first one is really energy transition. And that's where we are looking at tangible pilots and new asset classes. Us at Gen Zero, we are working directly with the Philippines and potential pilots on accelerated coal phase-out projects using carbon markets as a leverage in terms of improving the economics. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to develop there. Second area is around forestry, and likewise that includes the entire suite of forest conservation using new methodologies, afforestation and reforestation activities, and also the third one on agriculture. So I think there are many new and improved methodologies from international standards which bear merit and can look at how new asset classes with high integrity, as many of the other panelists have mentioned, can look at. At the back of it, when we look at investments, it's always against the backdrop of clear, predictable, and very robust policy development. And so we're very encouraged with the recent developments from the Indonesian government on opening up the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anshari. And you highlighted Article 6, of course, since Baku COP29 last year. Article 6 is finally fully concluded. Negotiations now is ready for operationalization, but it's relatively complex, and the regulation has to be there for authorizing units, for making the corresponding adjustments. And then the alignment with the international standards. I think a lot of the demand right now is, for example, coming from Corsia and the airlines, but there's only a few eligible methodologies and standards. I think demand could be around 75 to 150 million tons before 2028. So it's quite significant, but Indonesia in the current state cannot tap into that demand. So I want to open the floor. I don't see any flags. I think Pa Agus behind me flag. So can we have a mic over here, please? Do we have a walking mic? Or else, maybe you can come here. Okay.
Thank you. Bjorn, you probably have an eye just at the back of your head, so you could see my flag when you're sitting right there. Thank you very much. Selamat pagi, Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu. Thank you very much. I would like to actually just let you know that a couple of days ago, we had an informal dinner, Chatham House dinner that we Landscape Indonesia and AITA co-hosted and generously supported by the government of Australia. And what I'd like to do here is just to give you a gist of what we discussed. We don't attribute any of these to anybody, but just to let you know the summary. First is that I think everyone, the participants, welcome the approval of compliance market under the Paris Agreement at Baku, and is looking forward to implementing it. But also the caveat is that voluntary carbon market has been around for a very long time and quite mature. So the participants seem to be agreeable that we should probably just push the voluntary market as much as possible and see and prioritize it because it is indeed the low hanging fruit. And second is about regulation. The participants are very, very optimistic about Indonesia's progress in developing and to some extent fixing the regulatory environment for carbon market. One note
not only for Indonesia but also for other countries, is that I think regulation should be limited to what needs to be regulated and not what is not. So just regulate as necessary and not more. So don't over-regulate. Basically, that's what it is. Responding to the U.S. Exit from the Paris Agreement, I think the participants are not too concerned because the voluntary market happens regardless. And the US has done this before and we are just fine. So there's not too much worries about it. And the domestic market probably also needs to be further developed and established in Indonesia and other countries. Market price right now at the domestic level is relatively low, and that needs to be that is of concern of the participants. The question indeed is, where's the demand? I think there has been some disruption of the market in the past couple of years. In the voluntary market, and compliance market is still in the making. So demand needs to be basically advanced, and participants also were very supportive of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. I think it could incentivize new countries to adopt carbon pricing. And Article 4.6 creates a framework for cross-border credits. Mutual recognition agreements with Japan by Indonesia is welcome, and I think the participants are looking forward to more mutual recognitions with other standards globally, and highlighting the word recognition much more than the mutual part, because I think we don't need to do a two-way street from the get-go. And I think the question of sovereign demands, again, where is the demand from countries around Indonesia, in the EU, in Australia, in other countries. Thank you very much, Bjorn.
Thank you, Pagos, and yeah, we had I think a very, very good discussion. Now, I do see a number of flags around the table, and we do have very limited time, so please be concise. But I would start with Sam, please, from Australia. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and yeah, good afternoon, Bumari, and to all the panel. Thanks, Pagos, for that really good summary. I guess if I reflect on the Australian experience, we have a compliance market and a voluntary market, and I think one feature of the Australian experience is that it took a long time to develop the institutional arrangements, more than 15 years. So that actually makes me really excited in Indonesia, because I think you've got all the beginnings of the institutional arrangements, the regulatory framework. On the compliance market side, there's a start, and I think what we've seen in Australia is once you have a start of those arrangements, then ambition can be ratcheted up over time. I guess my question maybe for the group is, how do you take Bumari? You talk about the interest and enthusiasm from President Prabowo. So how do you convert that interest and enthusiasm into a sound coordination and governance mechanism that can really drive progress? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now moving to the EU, Sanders, please.
Thank you very much. So I'll be short, just to really say that the European Union is very, very interested to engage with Indonesia on these topics. We have a very long experience with carbon pricing, over 20 years, and we have by now realized that it is actually the most effective instrument, at least for us, for decarbonization. We're very happy. We will not be buying any of the credits as EU, because our legislative framework doesn't allow it. We need to make all our reductions domestically. But that doesn't mean that we are not interested in sharing our experiences with Indonesia. And we have just established a couple of months ago a task force at the level of the EU, Task Force of International Carbon Pricing and Carbon Markets Diplomacy, and they have identified Indonesia as a priority country. We just had 2 visits here with a lot of engagements on these topics, and what we are seeing is that there is a lot of interest in Indonesia to work on these topics also with the European Union. Our strengths are probably more in the domestic side and in sectors like energy and industry. But I think some of the things or some of the needs that were expressed to us, they are quite horizontal and have to be worked on in any case across sectors such as the data, the reporting, the inventory of emissions. All of that is a basis that you need to start from, and this is also where we needed to start from in the past. Of course, in addition, there is the prospect of the CBAM kicking in also for Indonesia, which creates an additional incentive for carbon pricing in Indonesia and for working with the EU on this. So in the coming weeks, we will be working on a work plan that we will discuss with Indonesia to then implement the support on this topic. And yeah, very happy to stay also with you in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, the EU example is always interesting because I think the VCM at its peak in 2021 reached around $2.1 billion in market value. The EU ETS at the same time was worth around $800 billion with generating revenues of up to 40 billion euros in that year through auctioning of allowances. So I really think that point of bringing the compliance market, also Indonesia's ETS potentially, with the voluntary and Article 6 side of the credits, really tells an interesting story. We do have, I think, a number of names I would like to kind of call upon, but also limited time. I see Pak Darsono, Pak Doni, of course, Pak Rizky from IDX Carbon. Anyone who wants to give some remarks, we have maybe 5 minutes before I will hand over to Ibu Mari for the closing remarks. Also here I see Pak Paul, Pak Karen, Ibu Karen. Do we have the mic? Pak Doni, please.
Maybe I'll just start. Thank you, Bjorn and Ibu Mari, everybody. I think very short. I think everybody who are here, most of us know about the size of the prize for Indonesia's carbon. If we unlock that potential, I mean, it's enormous. The other thing is that we keep talking about the demand and all the rest of it. I think Indonesia has the, whether you argue actually it's bigger than Brazil or, it's very big, it's huge, right? So the point is that I know that some of us have been involved in trying to accelerate, let's just say, actually the transformation. And we hope actually that it can be accelerated very fast because there's a finite window of timing as well, actually, to capitalize on this opportunity globally. But one thing that is very clear is that there's a significant demand on the voluntary side of things. When we talk to many of the global credit buyers in the world, I mean, Indonesia actually ranks at the top. At the moment, actually, unfortunately, there's very little supply coming from Indonesia. But the way they see Indonesia, the perception is great. I mean, we'll know that actually when we do that, build that, the buyers roundtable over here. But I just wanted to echo what Satya mentioned. Bring integrity back actually here. Align actually with international standards. I think that's what we talked about, actually mutual recognition. The third one is essentially trying actually to get the buyer coalition. So that buyers roundtable would be the first step in building that buyer coalition. Indonesia, with its potential, enormous, would be in the best position to set that coalition for the buyers.
Thank you, Pak Doni. I think this is a very concrete outcome that hopefully maybe we can bring together. I think AITA would be keen to support with a lot of the buyers in our network as well. I want to give maybe Paul one final minute and then we'll close with Ibu Mari. Do we have a mic, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Bjorn, Bu Mari, Bapak Ibu sekalian. I want to be short. The first thing is actually that with what we just heard now, we really need to see actions. What need to be done in short? Because in order to get all of this carbon project done, it takes a lot of time. But what is the basic that we need to do? And that's regulation. And it's very important that we really go to regulation, look at all regulation that we have. That's not only Perpres 98, but also law on that related to the Bursa and others. So let's prepare a very good law that really could create demand, that could, let's say, provide this integrity and all of the things. So we really have to go for the regulation as the first step. The second step, I really like to see a capacity building program, not only for the project developers, but more importantly, actually for the government, especially those that would prepare the regulation. Because how could they prepare a very good regulation if they are not, if they don't have any proper understanding on the market, on the technical, on sort of all of the things. I myself have been in the market for a long time. I have been involved in preparing the documentations, and so go through validation, verification, including financing. So I understand very well all of this kind of the pain that Pak Agus mentioned. So from looking at that process, it's really pain. There's a lot of time and effort need to be done. So it needs to be backed up by a proper regulation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Papol. And I'm getting some messages that we need to really round off. I think Ibu Mari needs to move on. So it's okay. It's okay. So then I'll just close the floor with two more raised flags. I think it's Ibu Karen and Pak John. 1 minute each, please. And then we have to move.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Karen Swasuna. I work for the International Trade Center. I just wanted to pick it up on one aspect over here that was referred by the panelists, which is the fact of just transition and how on the design of the tools that we do either for carbon markets or carbon financing, we consider the backbone of the economy. I think here in Indonesia, 64 million companies are actually micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. So the design of the financing, the carbon markets, they need to take that piece into account. So, and this could go into the challenges that those SMEs have to participate, because if you exclude them to access the carbon finance via whatever kind of mechanism, we are talking about 60% of Indonesian GDP. So it is the backbone of the national economy. So how that and the regulations must be done. We've been working on different kinds of pieces, but particularly data. They need to be able to measure. How do you have the tools that are affordable that they can measure the data of their own business and how they contribute either for mitigation or for something else. Participation in the design, I think we just hear that Indonesia is designing its regulations as well as its national determination contribution. So how is that the representation of small medium enterprises can be heard at that point and bring those challenges? So in the regulation and the design, we actually be able to address that part. And last but not least is the piece on capacity building and access to finance. Otherwise, you keep excluding this a specific piece of the activities out of it. So I just want to bring that part because we normally talk about the large projects or large companies, and that's a very challenging interface that we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And over to you, John, please.
Thanks. So there's 1 minute, obviously a very short period of time, but what I think is very important for Indonesia, which is either the first or the second most important country in terms of the scale of its NBS opportunity, which is at the lower end of the cost of abatement. So it's a global benefit, and it's a major asset of this country. You know, clearly the voluntary markets suffered, the valley of death for the last decade. But the point about the voluntary market, it was always meant to converge with a compliance market. Indonesia has to have a compliance market with an extremely credible pathway to net zero, which will improve the price of its output on NBS.
And so that, with this current administration, looks like it's a clear intent. It's just a question of the application of that policy into practice. And I think yesterday, Bapak Luhut was very clear that he said that one of the key ingredients that Indonesia needs to achieve this high growth rate that everybody in this country is aspiring to is to improve the quality of management. And if the quality of management, for whatever reason, is not really present in a particular category, welcome input from foreign management on some sort of cooperative or joint venture basis, and that way you speed everything up, because the whole point of the value proposition that we here in the NBS sector possess is time value. 25 years from now, NBS is going to have a lot less value unless we've all failed. If we've succeeded, then there is less time value. So the time is now, and so speed is really necessary as well as scale. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think Pak Luhut also mentioned that trust and credibility is the #1 space which Indonesia really needs to emphasize in the current state. And of course, gold you would buy essentially no matter where it comes from, the gold would still have the same value. But if a carbon credit comes from a project with human rights violations, or from a country where the NDC is not fulfilled, the value is entirely destroyed. So I think the trust and credibility here is really the key point. Now, Ibu Mari, I would like to invite you to provide some closing remarks, some closing reflections before I close the final roundtable.
Thank you everybody for all your inputs, because really came here to get inputs from everybody. A few key takeaways, nothing that was maybe surprising to all of you in this room, but I think it would be good to sort of remind ourselves these key takeaways as the government wants to improve the regulations around carbon markets. I think first, clear and predictable policy development that actually supports a credible pathway to all the sectors that you want to be able to have your supply from. And really, I think a number of you mentioned the potential, right? Unlock this potential that we have. It's enormous. You said it's first or second nature-based solution asset that we have. And we have been talking about that for some time, but you're correct, it's now. Otherwise, the value will go down if we don't actually take care of our nature-based assets. So I think this needs to be repeated, because you can't just talk about the carbon markets in the absence of the overall policy environment and direction, because the credibility for each sector comes from that very well-defined framework of the policy direction and transition pathways or development pathways in each of these different sectors. So it's, I think Paul mentioned that we're not just talking about reviewing or assessing the Perpres 98, but it has to be a bigger endeavor to get it right. I think second, everybody talk about the importance of high integrity markets. We need trust and credibility. We had a bit of a difference in perspective. I was quite intrigued. You were saying we have to actually start with the domestic standards, but many of you said international standards, and there's also MRA in there. I actually think maybe it's not neither or, it can be both, right? And I think China actually did both. You had domestic standards for domestic market, but you allowed for the cross-border, you allowed them to choose whether domestic or international. So I think we have to hear, Donnie, you said we have to hear from the buyers. So this buyers coalition roundtable that you are, I think you had one in London, which actually was very good for Pak Hashim, because Pak Hashim now is very focused on reviewing these regulations. So I think the more we hear from the buyers and what is needed, because we have to be hearing the buyers if we really want to have the market develop. So I think we need to hear more from the buyers, what kind of standards and the kind of high integrity markets that they want for us to develop. I think third was, how do we jumpstart the domestic market? I think I liked your carrot and stick idea. You know, is it the carbon tax? Is it the carbon incentive? And I think there's this external pressure from CBAM, which all our companies are facing. So this is what we need to work on. And I'm glad you mentioned capacity building, because I think we will also need to parallel that with the capacity building, because not all companies are like Barito who can do it on their own, right? We have many companies which are struggling with how to meet these standards. So, and then fourth, I think on the voluntary carbon market, it's interesting you said eventually voluntary carbon market and compliance market have to merge. So we need to address both voluntary carbon market and compliance market, as well as voluntary carbon market with corresponding adjustment and without corresponding adjustment. So we need to have that regulation, the regulations address that and not over-regulate, as Agus was saying. We need to come up with a regulatory framework that gives the predictability, the certainty, and adopts the best practices. And really listen to what the market is really asking for, but also remember what we need to do for our own domestic interest. And I think finally on the importance of the institutional building, the transparency and the coordination and the governance mechanism. Obviously, that's an important part of the high integrity markets, as well as the trust and credibility. So I think that was well noted. I think we have Pak Wahyu here from Ministry of Environment, but it won't just be the Ministry of Environment. It has to be collectively between different government agencies, as well as different parts of the government institutions. You know, OJK needs to be there. The Finance Ministry probably needs to be there, but it needs to come together in a coordinated way. And I suppose in many countries you start with a coordination, some kind of coordination mechanism, and eventually you will come up with some kind of structure where, because the problem with climate and carbon is that it's so cross-sectoral that eventually you will need to come up with a kind of a higher level institutional setup. But I think it's important to start today where we are with the coordination between the different agencies, but to listen carefully to all the stakeholders when we are designing the regulations.
Thank you, Bu Mari, for providing those closing remarks. I think it's a very good summary. Everyone knows that we wouldn't sell a house before setting the foundation first, painting the walls. And I think a similar analogy can be made for the carbon crediting. We need to have the regulation in place. We need to have the infrastructure in place. We need to have the methodologies and the trust for the market. And then we can start really opening it up and tapping into the international demand. So I want to thank IBC, ICGD for organizing this roundtable today, for giving AITA the chance to moderate and to speak. I think we are very keen to work with Ibu Mari, with ICGD, with IBC, with Padoni and everyone in bringing together the demand side of the market and continuing this conversation. And we do have this room, actually, I was told, available a bit longer. So for those of you who want to stick around and have a bit more informal discussion, feel free to stay around. And with this, I will close. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Thank you.